I'm assuming you fixed your home, but then how did you guys treat your daughter?
I did, yes. The fixing the home piece was what started me in this side company. We can get to that, but focusing on my daughter. So first, we knew, it's a really interesting. This part is the raw piece, is when you're confused and you're desperate and you're financially strapped and you're trying to decide, do my resources go to fixing my home? Because you find out quickly, depending on the source of the mold, you might find out that like insurance is not going to cover it.
Right.
And so, there's a financial strain there, right? But then you're looking at your child or your loved one who needs support. And these things are not free. And oftentimes the doctors that are highly skilled in treating patients and helping figure out sort of their personal puzzle to eliminating toxins, whatever those toxins are, also don't take insurance. So it's financially challenging. And then you're watching your children, what it feels like, suffer. And so emotionally challenging, right? We had to do both. We focused our resources on our oldest daughter because she was the one who was most, what we could tell, impacted. And we just dove deep into the functional medicine journey. And really, we were so blessed. I think the doctor that we found was, she was the first angel in our story, because she was so patient with us. Again, not for us, not understanding and learning the functional medicine way of practicing. We were very ignorant and probably a lot of our expectations and questions that we asked. But she maintained, she was so patient with us, and willing to support us, and she still does. She meets us very much where we are, because there's ebbs and flows in the healing journey, right? And so part of the process was first figuring out, what is my daughter actually dealing with? What level of inflammation? What are the symptoms that the inflammation is causing? And then how can we reduce that inflammation, whether that's by diet? So one of the first things that we eliminated was all gluten and dairy, and not because she's celiac, but because those, as you know, are highly inflammatory, can be highly inflammatory to some people, depending on, what other toxic burden that they have. And so once we eliminated that, she started to make some progress. She started to sleep through the night. She started to say more words, and the fog started lifting from behind her eyes, and we started kind of seeing her come back. And simultaneously with that, we left the home. Once we figured out that the home was one of the primary sources of that toxicity, we just left and never went back. Now, I mean, my husband and I went back because obviously we had things to do. We had to clean out the house. We had to go through remediation and all that. But the children, they never went back. We stayed with my parents for a while, which is an incredibly humbling experience. How old were we? We were in our late 30s. So we should have been in a point of time where we were very successful and independent, and we found ourselves functionally homeless, with two children in tow. So that was humbling from a lot. But at that point, like, your ego, like, what do you have to lose? So we left. We started seeing that progress through changes in diet, and then also trying to focus on how is her body eliminating. So really honed in on the fact that she was chronically constipated. So everything is just getting blocked up in there, and she'd had the leaky gut, and it's happening in your gut, it's happening in your brain. So we're starting to make all these connections as we're learning about how the body works, and not just any body, her body. And then also a lot of supplements, lots and lots of supplements at that time, which we've pulled back from, as again, we're learning more and making it sustainable and things. And so it was all God, actually. But we did our part in listening and learning. When he put, I always sort of describe that it's like he put these like stepping stones in front of us, and it was literally just one at a time. And we're like blindly, reaching for the next stepping stone, but he's always got us. That it was always there, when our foot met the ground. It's absolutely incredible to look back and just to see who were those stepping stones and how he strategically placed them in our lives, and how we were ready to receive the information that those people, those angels, were ready to give us. Because had any of those things happened out of sync, we wouldn't have been prepared to digest what exactly was ahead of us, which was, for us, and again, this is not the path for everyone, but for us, not exactly knowing how to handle our home environment, we left. We never went back, and we got rid of almost everything that we owned. We weren't working with anybody who could help us really parse through whether or not we needed to do that, or whether or not that was overkill. But at the time, my husband and I, we were basically on the verge of divorce at that time, because again, both of us were struggling with inflammation. Both of us were having all of these symptoms. And so we had many, many clashes. But we agreed in that moment to kind of take the nuclear option with respect to our home and our family. And just for the chance of maybe being able to help our daughter if it was true. And like, who in their right mind does that? Like, no, I think that's kind of the beauty of it looking back, is that we weren't in our logical mind. We were desperate and but also hopeful. And so it was faith. We just took a leap of faith and we did this. And within about 3 months, we started seeing a real change in her where, it wasn't just, sometimes when you're looking for a positive change, you sort of doubt, like, am I seeing what I want to see, or is it really a change? But about 3 months, other people outside of just my husband and I were noticing my daughter's improvements. And progressively today, she's in school with all neurotypical peers. She is, she is maybe about a grade behind, but we also tried some alternative schools in that, in the meantime and stuff. And so we're just trying to kind of figure out what works best for her. But she has had the autism diagnosis removed. Not that that was ever our goal, just that once we were able to eliminate what was causing the inflammation, and then the inflammation eliminated the symptoms. And then because she didn't have that symptomatology, she no longer qualified for that diagnosis. And so she sleeps well, she speaks, she looks at me, she says, "Mommy, I love you." She looks at me and she says mean things too, you know. But she's able to express herself in all versions of herself. And my husband and I sometimes look at each other when she's talking, a lot without taking a breath, and we're just like, we prayed for this, It's such a gift. It's such an incredible gift. And it really opened all of our eyes to how much our environment and our choices for foods and what we put in our body, snacks, drinks, all that, how all of that can accumulate depending on what your body is and is not able to eliminate